Former diplomat and public service icon, Ambassador Anthonia Ekpa, stood her moral ground in her days in office, not because she loved attracting attention to herself, but rather out of a desire to stand firmly on her early convictions about a virtuous and godly life. In the course of her career, she blazed the trail of transparency, fairness, and probity to the point of inviting criticism from individuals who considered her a stumbling block to their tendency to help themselves to public resources. But this Calabar-born believer in God, who was nurtured in early Christianity mainly by her mother, would have none of the demeaning traits she was accused of not allowing. Anyway, besides her mother, Calabar remains a reference point in the introduction of Christianity in Nigeria. So, Ambassador Ekpa would seem to have had good grounding for her eventual battle against graft.
She had 10 of us. So if you look at the twins, I'm number 8 because I came out first. My twin sister is a high court judge. She's number 9. And then we have the last born. So the two of us, my twin sister and I, and then the last one, did have quite some time with my mother. And she bent us over Christ. That's, I like to be metaphorical, poetic about it. She bent us over Christ. She taught us Christ. And we grew in Sunday school. She was Methodist, but I went to a Catholic primary school, convent school, Calabar Road in Calabar. And my grandmother was Catholic. My father was Catholic. But I lost my father early. So my mother was Presbyterian and Methodist. And so she took us to Methodist church. And it was there I met Sunday school as a child from about age 7 or much earlier. But I remember that age 7 I started taking roles in the Sunday school harvest events. And I want to remember and very much so bless God for one elderly lady, now late, Mrs. Enebri Frame of the Methodist Church, who was our Sunday school teacher. And and one Mr. Nathaniel, I can't remember the surname now. So they with our parents pulled us into Christianity.
Looking back, it has all signed up to a respectable life for Ambassador Ekpa, making her a good choice for giving a definition to the concept of integrity. Interestingly, she finds a place for God in the manifestation of an ideal which even the unbeliever might lay claim to.
Integrity is a value, and integrity is a soft skill. When I say it's a soft skill, it is something that you just have to live a good life. Integrity comes along with honesty. But you see, for you to have integrity, honesty, you have to understand the concept of probity, accountability. And all of these I put together in one packet, the fear of God. You see, the fear of God. There are people who have content of integrity without necessarily aligning it with God. But for us as Christians, because it is when you encounter challenge, when you are confronted by someone or people or a society that does not understand integrity and honesty and loyalty and sincerity, all of these things come together. And someone who has integrity would rather die than fail themselves first and then society. But before you fail yourself and society, you would have failed God.
As cameras trailed Dr. Ekpa, who throughout our inquiry was kept company by a husband who doted on her, the cheerful by nature former Nigerian envoy demonstrated a strong will underlying an understanding disposition towards humanity. The woman had had her scuffles with situations that challenged her stance on probity.
I started working as a university lecturer in the University of Calabar. From the day I began teaching in the university until I left the university and came to the public service, I have always confronted the challenge of standing for the truth. Because when I say integrity, it's standing for the truth, knowing what is right, and maintaining your moral principles. Okay, so I have always had challenges, and the worst of them, I think, came in the public service, and probably more directly because before I became a permanent secretary in the federal ministries or in the federal public service, I was reporting to others. So you see, as a public servant, you report to your permanent secretary, your director, whatever, depending on your level of person. But when you are the accounting officer, the permanent secretary, and I love the word accounting officer because, as a matter of fact, you are the guardian of the public purse. And what actually happens then is that you have access to funds that aren't yours. They are for government, in quote, but they are the people's funds, okay? And you have pressure from politicians with whom you're working. You have pressure from your staff, directors, from everywhere, from your village, from community, from everywhere, to be tempted to have access to that funds and to make it a general spray.
At this point, you're tempted to drop, "Oh dear," as you empathize with Dr. Ekpa. Well, she's not quite done. She reels out instances which tested the elasticity of her will to stick to that which was right.
In the course of my career, I have had to work as God would design it. I have had to work in places where I have to take decisions on behalf of others. For instance, in water resources, I was director for monitoring and evaluation of projects, water projects. And I went to Federal Ministry of Special Duties and Intergovernmental Affairs as a director first, then later, much later, as a permanent secretary. And I had to superintend over constituency projects and their execution. All right. In Ministry of Women Affairs, I had to superintend over funds meant for women and children. So, and I was in power as a director working closely with my permanent secretary. And I had worked in the Federal Character Commission where my integrity to take a decision on complying with the regulations, with the act that sets up the commission, whether or not to forget about the code that sets up the commission, the act of the commission, and the guiding principles. You see, you have a lot of pressure, more so from your principals. When I say principals, people ahead of you, your directors, your chairman, your this, your that, and that. So I have always had that challenge. But somehow, because of my understanding that first and foremost, this job I'm doing it for God. I am my ultimate principle, my superior beyond the government is God. And the Bible says, when you're working, work as if you were working unto the Lord. So that guided me. And then I flashed back to my upbringing, where my parents, my mother particularly, because my dad was a sailor, so he was almost always traveling. And once he came, but it was really my mother who taught us contentment. You can't have integrity if you don't have contentment. That's my understanding. And godliness with contentment is great gain. So that's what the Bible says. So I have had to be pushed And I have had to push back. Virtually push back.
She can afford to smile now, but in the days she's talking about, the weight of responsibility underpinned by abiding integrity couldn't have made her experience a picnic. But Mrs. Ekpa had garnered what she needed to confront a challenging adult life by her exposure as a child to Christian tenets. She couldn't have known it then, but she was actually being prepared by those Sunday school lessons for the battle to come. Inevitably, a few lines of love of country dropped from her lips.
Nigeria would be a better place if we had people who were God-fearing at the top of governance. Why Nigeria is suffering, why we have so much corruption, is because we don't value integrity. People want to have what is not theirs. People want to acquire what they cannot afford. People are not just satisfied and knowing, and I have that in my mind, and consciously so, that I don't have the time to spend all of these things. So what are you taking them for? Because you are stealing from the poor.
The Ekpa family has seen some turbulence, what with the death of an only son who had simply taken after his parents in godliness and a life which is spiritually circumspect.
And to the glory of God, I've handed it over to my children. So you can't bring something into this house and they don't ask you, where did you get it from? My late son particularly was very so godly. In fact, he saw anything, he would say, Mom. Or if you were here, he would ask, who are they? What are they looking for? I hope. Then you say, no. They trusted. And so they were like your monitors. Or they are like your monitors, because I still have some of them.
Talking about her children, Ambassador Ekpa has a few words of advice for young people.
My young people, youths, children, and Nigeria's future. Integrity pays. Honesty pays. Principles and morals are the foundation upon which you build your future. I love to tell people that tomorrow belongs to the youths. Tomorrow is yours, but you can't make tomorrow without integrity. You see, just one little miss, one little abuse of an opportunity, whether it is at the place of work or that you are not honest, can make you lose the entire of your life.
You can't lead a life so far displayed by Dr. Ekpa and fail to attract comments from those who appreciate exemplary conduct.
Is in percentage, he's more than 110% in integrity. I want to measure it. She has all the qualities that can be relied upon by a husband, by her boss, by society. Her integrity is unquestionable, and I don't question it.
I call her a woman of integrity because she started as a girl of integrity. I know that this has a lot to do with her belief system. It has a lot to do with her background. If you relate with Dr. Ekpa and you do not like truth and you do not like things going straight, that relationship is not going to last. This is somebody who is as straight as an arrow. It is difficult to bend her. She is almost immovable. when it comes to certain standards that she has set for herself. And I dare say that she may not have set them for herself, but she believed those standards that have been set somewhere, and that is the Bible. I think Ambassador Dr. Mrs. Ekpa is a book to be written, a dissertation to be written, a research to be made.
Ambassador Ekpa has gone into consultancy after active service, but this Amazon of a godly conduct never interacts in any environment without dropping a hint of integrity. She was certificated in godliness right from youth. Her adult life is only retaining the baton it took from a daughter of God.